Imagine, for just a moment, that you are opening up this really ancient, sacred text.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Right. But you're not opening it to find, like, a spiritual comfort blanket.
Yeah, that's usually what people expect, right?
Exactly. You're not looking for a gentle, divine pat on the back for a dejected prophet. Imagine you open it and find, instead, this cold, hard, uncompromising systems engineering manual.
A diagnostic blueprint.
Yes, a diagnostic blueprint for a completely collapsing society.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the provocation we are starting with today.
Which is, I mean, it completely shatters the lens through which most people interact with historical texts.
It really does.
We are just so conditioned to read these scriptures as, sentimental poetry. And because of that, we become totally blind to the sociology that is just staring us right in the face.
Yeah, that blindness is exactly what we are stripping away in this deep dive. Because, when we talk about diagnosing a problem like a medical diagnosis, there is this expectation of precision.
Right, like an X-ray.
Exactly. If you break your arm, you go to the hospital, they take the X-ray, and it shows that jagged white line.
And the doctor just points at it and says, there it is, broken.
Right. The causality is totally visible. The feedback is immediate.
Because the human brain really craves that kind of binary clarity, We want the world categorized into these neat, observable boxes, cause and effect, right there on the illuminated screen.
But then you step into the world of sociology.
Which is messy.
So messy. You step into the mechanics of civilizational collapse or systemic corruption, and suddenly that X-ray machine is completely useless.
Because societies don't just snap like a bone.
Right. We are looking at a diagnostic landscape that is incredibly murky. Societies, they rot, they warp over time.
Yeah, they manufacture these illusions of health while actively dying from the inside.
Exactly, which means you need an entirely different kind of diagnostic tool.
And that actually brings us to the core of the framework we are unpacking today.
Right, let's get into it.
So we are looking at the opening verses of Surah Ash-Shu'ara. That's chapter 26, verses 1 through 6 of the Quran.
But, and this is crucial, we are examining it entirely through a rationalist socio-economic analysis.
Specifically the framework established by thinkers like G.A. Parwez and the Tolu Islam movement.
Yeah, because we are explicitly bracketing out all the theological, religious sentimentality.
No magic.
No magic. And we aren't talking about dogma either. We are dissecting a foundational text on civilizational survival.
Because when you read these specific verses through this analytical lens, what emerges is an operational brief.
It's like a psychological intervention for anyone, a reformer, an activist, a whistleblower who is trying to fix a failing system.
But to really grasp the weight of that intervention, we need to establish a baseline. Like, how does a functional social system actually operate?
Okay, walk me through that.
Well, in any closed system, survival depends entirely on a feedback mechanism.
Like a thermostat.
Exactly like a thermostat in your house. Or, the pain receptors in your nervous system.
Right, so you touch a hot stove, the pain receptor sends a signal.
It says tissue damage is occurring. Pull your hand back.
Yeah. And the reformer, or the messenger in this historical context, serves that exact same function for a society.
They do. They observe the data, they identify the exploitation or the dysfunction, and they feed that information back to the community.
To trigger a course correction.
Exact.
So the messenger isn't some holy figure floating on a cloud dispensing mystical wisdom.
No, not at all. They are the socio-economic pain receptor. They are the alarm bell.
Okay, I love that framing, the alarm bell.
And the terrifying reality of systems theory is that if the feedback mechanism breaks down or just gets overwhelmed, the entire system is doomed.
It's over.
Yeah. So the opening of this chapter is addressing the reformer. Not to offer a shoulder to cry on, but to issue a really severe warning about a specific pathology.
A pathology that destroys feedback mechanisms from the inside out.
Precisely.
But wait, before we even get to that psychological warning, we have to look at the very first thing the text does.
The opening letters.
Yes. The first verse is just 3 letters. Ta, sin, mim.
In Arabic, these are known as the muqatta'at, the abbreviated letters.
Right. And for centuries, traditionalist systems have treated these letters as these unbreakable, mystical codes.
Literal passwords to the divine.
Passwords that the human intellect is supposedly too fragile or too flawed to even comprehend.
But think about the sociological function of that traditionalist claim for a second.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, if the absolute very first thing you encounter in a text is framed as inherently incomprehensible...
Oh, I see where you're going.
Right. You have been conditioned to surrender your critical thinking before the first actual word is even spoken.
Wow. Yeah, it's a brilliant, insidious defense mechanism for a stagnant society.
It establishes a complete monopoly on meaning.
Because if the text is a puzzle that human reason can't solve, then you need help.
You need a specialized class of people, a clerical elite, to tell you what it means and what to do.
You literally outsource your intellect.
Exactly. But if we analyze the linguistic and historical reality of 7th century Arabia, all that mysticism just evaporates.
Yeah, Parwa's analysis points out that ancient Arabic, much like ancient Hebrew, frequently utilized letter abbreviations as just a standard linguistic tool.
It wasn't an esoteric cipher, it was shorthand.
We do the exact same thing today, right? We just don't realize it.
All the time.
Yeah.
When you get an invitation that says RSVP, you don't stare at it thinking it's a magical incantation.
Right. Or when you see DNA or AM and PM, your brain automatically expands the abbreviation into its full conceptual meaning.
Exactly. And in the sociolinguistic environment of that time, these abbreviated letters represented specific, universally recognized attributes.
So in this framework, they denote attributes of the divine.
Yeah. Terror indicating supreme power or reach.
Okay.
Sin representing all-encompassing hearing or perception, and Mim standing for absolute knowledge.
So basically, the text is opening by declaring its operating system.
Yeah.
It's saying, this diagnostic manual is based on comprehensive data, total perception, and universal laws.
That is exactly what it's doing.
But here is where the traditionalist argument really falls apart for me.
Oh, about it being mystical.
Yeah, because immediately following those 3 letters, verse 2 says, these are the verses of the book that makes things clear.
The Kitab-i Mubin.
The clear book.
And that juxtaposition is the first major systemic argument the text makes.
It flags its own linguistic nature.
By opening with the raw phonetic building blocks of human speech letters, and in the very next breath calling itself clear.
It is aggressively dismantling the idea of esoteric codes.
It's built from the exact same alphabet the community uses in the marketplace every single day.
Right. I hear you. But let's push back on the reality of how this text is actually treated in the real world.
Sure, let's do it.
Because if a book explicitly calls itself clear, why does the traditionalist infrastructure claim you need to master 18 external sciences to read it?
And memorize centuries of secondary literature.
Yes. You have to study for decades just to decipher single paragraphs, supposedly.
Well, because an artificial barrier to entry preserves the status quo.
Ah. Keep the power where it is.
Exactly. Think about it. If you design a universal manual for living, but that manual requires a secondary external manual just to decode the first one.
And a third manual to validate the second manual?
Right. Then your universal system has failed at its primary objective.
The text isn't the failure, though.
No, the failure lies in the community's refusal to process the raw data. The evidence is clear. The gatekeeping is manufactured.
It's kind of like buying a smoke detector that only beeps in ancient Latin.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
And you have to hire a historian to stand in your hallway and translate it while your house literally burns down.
That is a perfect analogy. The alarm is sounding, but the society has built an entire industry around interpreting the sound rather than putting out the fire.
That's wild. But it brings us to the core conflict of the episode.
Right.
If the manual is clear and the evidence of societal decay is obvious, but the community actively chooses to ignore it.
How does the reformer react?
Yes, and this is where we hit the most provocative part of this entire analysis, the malfunction of grief.
Let's look at verse 3.
Okay, so the standard sentimental translation usually reads, "Perhaps you will grieve yourself to death that they do not believe."
And that's almost universally framed as empathy, like a divine acknowledgement of a heavy heart.
Oh, don't be sad that they aren't listening.
Right, just a warm pat on the back.
But the framework we are applying today tears that interpretation down to the studs.
Because of the key word in the Arabic text.
Yes, the word is bakyu.
The root is BKH. And the linguistic precision here changes the entire paradigm.
How so?
Because this word does not denote a passive sadness or a gentle weeping. It describes a biological or psychological process of self-consumption.
Self-consumption.
It is something killing itself from the inside out. A corrosive, inward collapsing destruction.
But wait, let me ground this in human reality for a second.
Sure.
Because I am really struggling to see how this isn't just a description of ultimate virtuous empathy.
Make your case.
Okay, if I am a compassionate doctor and I have a patient whose disease is entirely curable, but they look me in the eye and refuse to take the medicine,
You're going to be devastated.
I'm going to be destroyed by that. Or, an even more visceral example, a mother trying to pull her child out of a burning house,
Right.
and the child keeps violently fighting her, running back into the flames. that mother is going to scream. She's going to cry tears of blood.
She's going to consume herself with grief.
Exactly. So isn't this Baki just the highest form of human compassion? Why are we pathologizing empathy?
Because we are not talking about a mother and a child. We are talking about the architecture of civilizational reform.
Okay.
It is deeply human to feel that grief, yes. But in the context of systems engineering, if you allow that grief to dictate your operational capacity,
It becomes a malfunction.
it becomes a catastrophic malfunction.
Walk me through how empathy becomes a malfunction, structurally.
Think back to the concept of the feedback mechanism we talked about.
The thermostat, the pain receptor.
Right. The reformer's objective function is to observe the data of societal decay and present the corrective evidence.
That's their job.
If that reformer tethers their own psychological survival to the community's immediate receptivity, they have created a fatal dependency.
Oh.
They have effectively said, my ability to function is now conditional on the very change I am trying to produce.
That's a circular loop.
It's a loop with no exit.
Wow.
You cannot function until they change, but they cannot change unless you are functioning at peak capacity to guide them.
So by internalizing their refusal as your own personal failure, you destroy the only working mechanism the system has left.
Exactly. The verse is not offering a warm hug.
It's a sharp psychological intervention.
It's saying you are consuming yourself from the inside out because of their choices. You are breaking the instrument. Stop.
Okay, that completely flips the script. The grief isn't a virtue, it's an ego trap.
It is.
It's the reformer unconsciously making the community's failure about themselves.
And we really have to clarify what the community is actually failing to do here.
Right, because the traditional translation says the reformer is grieving because the people fail to believe.
The word in the text is mu'minina.
Which is, wait, isn't that just believers?
That is arguably the most misunderstood term in the entire lexicon. Under the rationalist framework, mu'minina has absolutely nothing to do with blind theological belief.
Nothing at all.
It is not about accepting unproven dogma without question.
So what does it mean? If I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, well, belief is belief.
In this context, it is rooted in peace and security, achieved through conviction based on evidence.
Based on evidence.
Yes. It refers to those who engage with the data, those who process the incoming signal.
Ah.
The reformer's pathology, this self-consuming Baki state, is triggered by the community's epistemological failure.
Epistemological failure, meaning the breakdown of how they process truth.
Exactly.
So the society is looking at undeniable evidence of their own socio-economic collapse.
The wealth inequality, the corruption.
The injustice. They're looking right at the data, and they're just filtering it out.
And the reformer is taking that filtration as a personal catastrophe.
Which is why the text intervenes. It firmly reestablishes boundaries.
It tells the reformer, your mandate is to present the ayat, the signs, the evidence points.
Your job is clarity of transmission. What the community does with that signal is entirely their domain.
It is their data point, not your verdict.
Their data point, not your verdict. That is so powerful.
If you spend your limited energy mourning the fact that a broken system acts like a broken system, you have abandoned your post.
You've abandoned your post. That is profoundly pragmatic.
It is pure systems theory.
But it begs a huge question about the psychology of the masses.
Okay, what's the question?
If the reformer stops agonizing and the society just keeps humming along, ignoring the glaring evidence of their own demise, how do they sleep at night?
That is the million-dollar question.
Because failing systems don't usually walk around openly admitting they are the villains of the story.
Right. They don't say, we are actively destroying our children's future.
No. They dress up their destruction as virtue.
They have to. Or the cognitive dissonance would literally tear them apart.
And the sources draw on a fascinating concept here, right?
Yes, referred to as zuyina
Zuyina, which means actions that are made to appear beautiful or righteous to the one performing them.
When a society is fundamentally corrupt, it builds this incredibly elaborate psychological architecture to normalize its dysfunction.
You make the ugly look beautiful. And the specific word the test uses to describe this behavior is yazna'un.
Yes, yazna'un. It implies industry, manufacturing, construction.
So it's not accidental.
No, it is the creation of an artificial reality. It's a society performing the physical mechanics of morality while remaining completely devoid of its socioeconomic substance.
Parwes provides this incredibly vivid and honestly darkly hilarious anecdote to illustrate what mechanical morality actually looks like.
Oh, the businessman story.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to spend a minute on this because it perfectly captures Yasna'un. It really does set the scene.
Okay, picture a businessman in the local market. And he is utterly ruthless. He is running a monopoly, hoarding goods, and extracting a 300% profit margin from a desperate population.
He is basically bleeding his community dry.
Exactly. But if you ask him, he considers himself the most righteous, pious man in the entire city.
And his community probably views him that way as well.
Totally. Because his physical performance of piety is flawless.
Right.
So the story goes that this businessman is in the middle of his shop, engaged in this vicious, screaming argument with a customer over a few pennies.
He's actively exploiting this person in real time.
Yes. And suddenly his son runs in, panicked, and says, "Father, the time for the Azra prayer is almost over."
And watch what the mind does here to preserve its own perceived goodness.
The businessman stops dead in his tracks. He holds up a finger to the customer she is financially suffocating and says, "Hold that thought. I must fulfill my religious duty."
He walks to the corner of his shop, perfectly aligns his toes, folds his hands at the exact right angle, and executes the physical movements of the prayer with absolute mechanical precision.
A perfect performance.
He finishes, turns his head to the right, turns his head to the left, and then instantly spins back around to the customer.
And resumes screaming.
And resumes screaming, ruthlessly extracting every last cent.
It is the ultimate simulation of health. He has successfully amputated the ritual from its purpose.
Because if the ritual, the prayer, the salat, is supposed to operate as a system to eradicate obscenity and establish economic justice.
Which is its actual systemic function.
Right. But it has literally zero impact on his exploitative business model. So what did he just do?
He just engaged in Yasna'un.
Manufactured action. Artificial morality.
And we see this exact same mechanism today, just wearing different clothes.
Oh, give me an example.
Think about corporate greenwashing.
Yes.
You have a massive multinational corporation that is dumping toxic runoff into a river, destroying the local ecosystem.
But their corporate headquarters is LED certified.
Exactly. And they mandate a 1-hour online sustainability mindfulness module for all their employees.
Or a tech company whose algorithm is demonstrably radicalizing teenagers, but they put up a black square on social media for human rights.
Precisely. They're performing the mechanics of morality.
The system is actively dying of corruption, but it is surviving psychologically by going through the motions of virtue.
They think, we are praying, so we are good, or we posted the awareness graphic, so we are ethical, while the very fabric of their society is unraveling.
The clear evidence that their actions are destructive is just ignored, because they have bought into their own artificial simulation.
Which naturally leads to the most frustrating question in the world.
Oh, I know where you're going.
If you are the architect of this system, if you are the divine, and you're watching this society completely dilute itself with artificial morality while driving the car off a cliff...
Why not just grab the steering wheel?
Exactly. This brings us to verse 4.
Right, the text says something really striking here. If we wished, we could send down a sign from the sky that would make their necks bow in submission.
The ultimate why not question, the demand for the miraculous override.
And it makes sense from a human perspective. If I am watching a society destroy itself, and I have the power to drop an undeniable, physics-defying miracle from the sky.
Like a giant glowing hand in the clouds.
Yeah, a giant glowing hand that forces everyone to instantly behave, cooperate, and establish justice. Why wouldn't I do it?
Why wouldn't a benevolent creator save everyone by force?
Right?
Because forced compliance is the death of conscious life.
Wait, explain that.
If you enforce behavior through sheer terror or a magical override, you haven't saved the society. You have lobotomized it.
But you saved the people from suffering.
Did you? Or did you just turn human beings into biological automatons?
Wow, okay, I see.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, a conscious society fundamentally requires 3 things: intellect, engagement, and the agency to choose. Yes. A social system runs on processing evidence. If you short-circuit the human brain with a terrifying miracle, they aren't bowing their necks because they recognize the value of justice.
No, they are bowing their necks out of raw, animalistic fear.
They aren't a society anymore. They are hostages to the miraculous.
And hostages do not build civilizations.
No, they don't. Bypassing human agency destroys the very definition of what the system was designed to cultivate: conscious growth.
Which is why the framework emphasizes the law of requital.
مكافأة.
I really want to spend some time unpacking this, because the traditional view of divine punishment is just deeply entrenched in our cultural psyche.
Oh, it's everywhere.
We usually picture an angry deity sitting on a throne, keeping a tally of our sins, and deciding to hurl a lightning bolt or cause an earthquake because he's personally offended.
And that anthropomorphic view of punishment is exactly what Parwez's analysis is dismantling.
So how does mukafat-i-amal work?
The law of requital is not an angry deity snapping his fingers. It is structural causality.
Structural causality.
It is the law of cause and effect applied to human sociology, just as gravity applies to physics.
Okay, so when verse 6 says that the community mocks every new signal they receive, and that the news of what they mocked will soon overtake them, what does that actually mean mechanically?
It means their consequence is already in motion.
It's already happening.
Yes. The text isn't saying, because you laughed at the messenger, I am going to arbitrarily punish you next Tuesday.
Right.
It is saying, by mocking the signal, you have actively chosen the structural path of your own destruction.
Let's build a model for this to make it really clear.
Okay, let's do it.
Imagine a massive suspension bridge spanning a deep gorge, and the engineers place sensors all over the cables to measure stress.
Those sensors are the feedback mechanism.
Right. So one day, the sensors start blinking red. The data is absolutely clear. The steel is fatiguing. The weight limit is being drastically exceeded by overloaded cargo trucks.
And so the engineers, the reformers, present the data to the mayor. The bridge is failing. We must reduce the load.
But the mayor, the local businesses, and the trucking companies look at the data and laugh.
They mock it.
They say, we've always driven heavy trucks over this bridge. Our ancestors drove heavy trucks over this bridge. It looks perfectly fine to us.
They filter out the corrective signal.
And they keep driving the overloaded trucks.
Fast forward 3 years.
The bridge suddenly snaps in half during rush hour, collapsing into the gorge.
Now, here is the question.
Did an angry engineer strike the bridge down with a thunderbolt to punish them for mocking him?
Of course not.
No.
The bridge collapsed under the accumulated weight of their own uncorrected errors.
The consequence was baked into the choice to ignore the data.
The consequence was baked into the choice. That is terrifyingly logical.
A society that continuously ignores socio-economic feedback accumulates dysfunction. It builds up systemic entropy until a single internal shock wave turns it to ashes.
They aren't usually destroyed by foreign armies first. They rot from the inside out because they silence the alarm bell.
And this brings us right back to the reformers' grief. This is why the Baki state is a malfunction.
Exactly. The bridge is falling. The data was presented. You cannot magically reinforce steel with your tears.
You can't. But this brings up a fascinating psychological quirk of failing societies.
Which is?
If the bridge is structurally failing and the evidence is right there on paper, why does the society demand a magic trick instead of just reading the engineering report?
Oh.
Why do they demand Karamat miracles instead of burn and logical reasoning?
Well, because engaging with reason requires accountability.
Oh, yeah.
Demanding magic requires nothing. It is the ultimate intellectual cop-out.
It's just shifting the burden of proof.
Exactly. If the reformer says, your economic system is built on hoarding wealth, and it is starving the working class, here is the data.
Then the community has to actually do something.
Right. They have to do the incredibly hard, painful work of changing their behavior and giving up their power.
But if they say, I won't listen to your economic data unless you can make a camel walk out of this solid rock,
They have successfully avoided the issue entirely.
they make the conversation about the reformers' ability to bend the laws of physics rather than their own exploitation.
It's a distraction tactic, and when they aren't demanding magic, they deploy a different defense mechanism.
The ultimate thought-terminating cliche.
The paralysis of traditionalism.
Has anyone ever said this before?
Yes. The demand for a historical chain of transmission above all else.
Right.
If an idea doesn't have a pedigree of dead clerics attached to it, it is functionally invisible to them.
The sources recount two incredible historical anecdotes that illustrate this intellectual paralysis perfectly.
Let's hear them.
Okay. The first one takes place in Lahore, Pakistan in 1954. It is an international Orientalist conference.
Okay, setting the scene.
You have to picture this. A sweltering hall, packed with scholars from all over the East and the West. The air is thick with academic posturing.
A high-stakes intellectual environment.
Very high stakes. And the author of our framework, G.A. Parwez, stands up to present a paper.
And what does he do?
He presents a completely original thought derived directly from the linguistic analysis of the Quranic text. He lays out the logic, the linguistic roots, the socio-economic implications.
That's a masterpiece of rational deduction.
Exactly. But how do the local traditionalist scholars react?
Let me guess. They didn't engage with the logic?
They didn't engage with a single premise of his argument. They didn't debate his linguistics. They literally laugh at him.
Wow.
And their only critique is, which ancient imam said this? Where is your chain of transmission? You made this up yourself, therefore it is worthless.
The local intellectual environment had become so thoroughly paralyzed by traditionalism that originality itself was viewed as a defect.
The ability to generate a new thought was treated as a crime.
But here's the kicker to that story.
Oh, right, the Western scholar.
Yes, a Western scholar, an outsider who doesn't belong to their religious tradition at all, pulls him aside after the presentation.
And what does he say?
He essentially embraces the originality. He says, I don't care who said it 800 years ago. The logic holds up. The evidence points to this conclusion.
The contrast is just staggering, isn't it?
It really is. The society that claims divine ownership of the text is paralyzed by the ghosts of their ancestors, incapable of navigating the text themselves.
Meanwhile, the outsider simply engages with the evidence.
And the second anecdote perfectly escalates this paralysis from the academic to the downright absurd.
The moon landing.
The 1969 Apollo 11 mission.
I love this story. So humanity literally leaves the planet. Neil Armstrong walks on the moon.
The scientific evidence is overwhelming. Telemetry data, video broadcasts, actual moon rocks brought back to Earth.
Undeniable evidence. And yet, prominent traditionalist clerics in various parts of the world issue religious decrees violently protesting the moon landing.
Claiming it must be a Hollywood hoax.
Yes. And what was their rationale?
It wasn't scientific.
No. Their rationale was that it conflicted with their traditional, unexamined medieval worldview of the cosmos.
Because the scholars of the 12th century didn't write about men walking on the moon.
Then walking on the moon must be impossible.
It's wild. When science presented literal physical evidence, the traditionalist response was to reject reality because their ancestors hadn't pre-approved it.
Which forces us to ask a devastating question about the agency of a society that operates this way.
Go ahead.
If your entire epistemological framework relies on the past or on sitting around waiting for magical interventions, your society becomes intellectually comatose.
You completely lose the ability to navigate the present.
Right. If a new problem arises, say a global pandemic or artificial intelligence or climate change, you cannot solve it.
Because the ancestors didn't leave a specific fatwa about algorithms.
Exactly. So the reformer's job to bring this massive systemic analysis all back together.
It's not to perform magic.
And it is not to recite 800 years of traditional consensus.
No. The reformer's mandate is devastatingly simple. Point out the signpost. Function as the clear feedback mechanism.
This path leads to survival based on these socioeconomic laws. That path leads to structural collapse based on the law of requital.
The reformer cannot pick the community up, put them on their back, and carry them down the right path.
The community must walk the path themselves.
Which leads us to the grand synthesis of this entire deep dive.
Yes, let's tie it all together.
The reason we spent so much time unpacking the first 6 verses of Surah Ash-Shu'ara is because, as the analysis points out, these verses are the operational template for the rest of the text.
It is a brilliantly structured document, because if you read past verse 6, the rest of chapter 26 runs through 7 consecutive historical case studies.
Right. You get the narrative of Moses, then Abraham, Noah, Hud, Salih, Lot, and Shu'aib.
And every single one of these historical missions follows the exact systemic dynamic we just outlined.
It's like watching a sociological algorithm run 7 times in a row.
A reformer brings clear evidence.
The community demands magic or uses traditions to filter out the evidence.
The reformer is warned not to self-destruct with grief.
The community's choices trigger the law of requital.
And the structural consequence arrives, and the system fails.
Case study after case study proving the sociological law.
But the profound genius of the text is its sequencing.
Because the chapter does not open with the failure of the community.
No. It opens with the psychology of the reformer.
Because the very first point of failure in any collapsing system is not the stubbornness of the masses.
It's the feedback mechanism.
The first point of failure is the feedback mechanism breaking down under the weight of that stubbornness. The psychological collapse of the reformer is the true point of no return.
Wow. So if we synthesize all of this, The linguistics, the systems theory, the law of requital, the message of this foundational text is just incredibly pragmatic.
It's a survival manual.
It really is. If you are trying to change a failing system, the evidence is clear. Your function is transmission. Present the data.
What the community does with that data belongs to the structural laws of cause and effect.
Stop internalizing their failure to process reality as your own personal catastrophe.
Stay functional.
Stay clear and move forward.
It is a masterclass in systemic boundaries and the absolute preservation of human agency.
It really is. And, it leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to chew on as we wrap up.
Let's hear it.
We look back at these ancient societies, right? The ones demanding miracles from the sky, begging for a giant glowing hand to come down and force everyone to be good.
To enforce harmony without the messy work of human choice.
Right. And we look at them with a bit of arrogance, don't we? We think, oh, how primitive. We have evolved past demanding magic.
But have we?
Have we? Because if forcing a population to do the right thing destroys the very essence of a conscious society, look at our world today.
Look at our obsession with algorithmic nudging.
Yes. Look at tech billionaires trying to engineer social consensus by subtly manipulating our dopamine receptors on social media.
Or the desire for an artificial superintelligence that can just run the economy and make all the hard choices for us so we don't have to.
Is any of that really a technological breakthrough? Or is it just the modern human being, tired of the hard work of consciousness, trying to build our own signs from the sky, to forcefully bow the necks of the masses?